Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Pitchside Podcast. I'm your host, the HOD of the PSP. Like, share, comment on this video, subscribe to the channel, of course, help us reach the 500 subscribers mark. Finally, I'm past the 250 and I can really go down that long, winding road towards the 500. Follow me on social media. I'm at PSP on Twitter, PitchsidePod on Instagram. Listen to the podcast on Spotify, Google Podcasts, or wherever you can get it from, as well as catching it later on www.webreathesports.com. Happy New Year, everyone. Hopefully, this year would be better than the preceding one because, 2020 was horrible. Hopefully, 2021 will be better than it in footballing terms and in all of the aspects of life. It is Friday, of course, so it means we have a weekend to preview in the European elite football, and we start as usual from the Premier League, and it is match day 17 in the Premier League. The matches are going ahead. Despite the lockdown being reinforced pretty much in Britain after the new surge and the new strand of the virus in Britain, but the football must go on, it looks like, and despite most of the cities in the country being in Tier 4, Tier 5, the lockdown restrictions, but it looks like the Premier League is going on this weekend, of course, match day 17th. There's a lot of interesting fixtures, of course, starting with the two brilliant ones today, really to look forward. Everton hosting West Ham and Manchester United hosting Aston Villa today on Friday. Everton versus West Ham, I think. Everton now are low-key going on a great form as of late, really, of course, after that sort of static shock in the couple of weeks in middle October/late October to early November. They looked unsolicited, they looked really out of depth, and everybody wrote them off pretty much from a finish inside the top four, let alone a title conversation altogether. But they got themselves together. They defeated, of course, 4 teams on the bat, and these 4 teams, like, not any teams, like, they included victories against Chelsea, Leicester City and Arsenal. And I know that the Arsenal victory may not scream a lot considering the state of Arsenal this season, but realistically, it's still a big victory for the Toffees. Also, victory against Sheffield United as of late, and the matchday 16th on Boxing Day. So Everton are really heading into this one incredibly momentous, let's say. It's a big momentum booster for them against their opponents, of course, in West Ham, who are sitting at 10th. They're not far, to be fair, from the top table finish. Also West Ham had a great season so far, compared, of course, to where they were last season's time around. I think it's a better position, obviously, for a lot of reasons. They would definitely, I think, want to be secure and safe above relegation and as comfortable of a place they can get on the table. Defeated once in the last 5. Yes, also only won once in the last 5 and 3 draws in between. So this is a game that I think West Ham would enter with, with the mentality, okay, we get a point out of the Goodison Park and we're fine. But for Everton, it's much more than that. I think the momentum has to keep going for them. 3 other points again at home. They need to be the absolute objective, I think, for Everton is to win this game against West Ham, as tricky as it is, really, against a side that, under David Moyes, seems to be finding its way now towards being a more stable side. I think the side has grown more used to the 5-4-1 of sorts, in the absence, of course, of Mikel Antonio continuing his absence for injury. It still looks like we're going to be getting that 5-4-1 from West Ham. They're a good side. They're a very good side, I think, in terms of the work rate, the pressing, the aggressiveness, the active state of them. They are one of the best sides, I think, in the Premier League to watch. Not exactly having the most enjoyable football or the greatest sort of, most pleasing passing style, or I don't know, or maybe they don't have the biggest of names or the biggest of superstars. But in any way, they are very enjoyable to watch, and I think we're going to be getting some interesting sort of tactical, battle between David Moyes against one of the old players in the game as well, and Carlo Ancelotti. I mean, hopefully this game would be as interesting. A game that is, I think, even as interesting, if not more, is of course Manchester United facing Aston Villa tonight on Friday at Old Trafford. In my opinion, this is the game that probably would test Man United's mettle. Hear me out on this one. The last couple of games that United had this season were not against the strongest of opposition. Let's just clarify this. Since the derby against Manchester City, they played 4 games against Sheffield United, Leeds United, Leicester and Wolves. And among those 4, I would say that Leicester is the strongest. And they draw against them, so expectedly. And even against Sheffield, who have only 2 points so far this season, and still they struggled to defeat them 3-2 away from home, and they almost, squandered the lead at the very end. Like, it was a crazy sort of game. They have momentum again going for them. The victory 6-2 against Leeds as not controversial, but as unconvincing, because we all know Leeds United, and I said it a lot, they play suicidal kind of football to just open themselves a lot. And you don't expect a team that opened itself that way to not concede 6 goals on the trams, and they did. And then they had the real test, I would say, against Leicester, and they passed it, sort of. I don't want to say that. I think they passed it, really, with the minor damage, I would say, of just drawing 2-2. And then, of course, there was the shambolic performance against Wolves. I think it was shambolic. Like, as I said it in a review in that match, I said that it was a bad performance, and it was just bailed out of jail by Marcus Rashford in the last couple of minutes, and even that goal was a deflection, so it wasn't exactly the greatest of performances. So this is, I think, an opportunity for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer to test his mettle, test his tactical sort of genius against a side in Aston Villa that is low-key also having the best season they could have in the league so far. They are sitting at 5th. Not just sitting at 5th, but also 2 games in hand. That comes crucial, and that comes really, really important when you're going to be talking about the standings at the end of the season, when these games hopefully will be all played. Aston Villa are now 26. They have an opportunity if they win both of these games, and they have a game against Newcastle, which I think is more or less winnable, but by every standard possible. And then they have a game against Manchester City, which was rescheduled, of course, to take place at on January 20 or 21st, I think it was on January 20th, yes, at 8:15. So they have those games in hand, and if they win those games, they become 32 points, and you don't know how, and between now and when they play those games in hand, how things are going to be panning out in the table. So for Aston Villa, this is as big of a chance as it could get, and we saw them against Chelsea last time out, delivering a great performance, having a great, having incredible sort of, defensive, and in the middle of the park as well, being really compact, being really, condensed well, and closing down the spaces on Chelsea for most of the game, really not allowing them a lot to do. And, getting a point where it could have gone more, really, at a certain point of the game. They could have gotten more out of it, especially in the first half of that game, but I think the point was deserved anyway. So this is a big chance, I think, for both of these teams to test their mettle, for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer to say, okay, maybe I didn't have the best of performances against Wolves, but I need to have the best of performances against Aston Villa, because Aston Villa look like a much more dangerous attacking threat than Wolves at the moment, considering that they have a proper striker in Ollie Watkins, that he moves really well, and they have also supporting cast of the likes of Jack Grealish, Bertrand Traore, who are really going to be all over the place as well. Like, Jack Grealish is going to bring them nightmares, really. A player in that ilk who can hold the ball really well, who can, contain sort of the pressure that any team is going to oppose on him, is going to be hell for leather for United, trying to keep Aston Villa out of their net. And we all know that their defence is fallible, so to speak. Obviously, I reckon it's going to be Eric Way and Harry Maguire starting, but again, my doubts are all over that defence of Man United at the moment. Anyway, this is of course for the games on a Friday. On Saturday, 4 games are going to be played. Tottenham hosting Leeds United at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Clearly, this is a game where Tottenham Hotspur also going to be tested against a side that actually attacks a lot, but I think it's going to be a golden opportunity for Tottenham Hotspur because Leeds again opened themselves up really well, and the game against West Brom, of course, where Leeds defeated them 5-0, I mean, I think it was an anomaly because West Brom are not exactly the team that would go out and attack even. But Tottenham Hotspur have Son and Kane, and they have also a bunch of other players who can create a lot of danger, and they sit and defend for the most part really well, except for the last couple of games really, where they seem to don't know what to do, and seem that everybody figured them out, in my opinion. I think the only problem that Tottenham are going to be facing is the fact that Leeds United are mobile, are actually mobile, not like, for example, say Arsenal or Manchester City, who don't seem too much mobile, but the Leeds United, you don't understand the players, in which position they are taken, so it's not necessarily the easiest of things to do, and it will be a hard game for Jose Mourinho to contain those Leeds United players into his condensed sort of 5-3-2 or a 4-5-1 sort of formation, with Kane dropping deep. Kane has been linked with Manchester City, weirdly, I don't know why. Hopefully I'm going to be checking out on that in the transfer talk video later on today. Crystal Palace hosts Sheffield United. Straightforward, I think I would say Crystal Palace would win. In my opinion, I have no doubt that that Sheffield United are going to be losing again, but we'll see what is going to happen. Brighton hosts Wolves, and West Brom hosts Arsenal. And this is, I think, the third of the biggest games for Arsenal, after, of course, victory against Chelsea, victory against Brighton, which were absolutely important and crucial for keeping Arteta's job, for getting the confidence back for the fans, really, and everything like that. I think the game against West Brom today, or tomorrow, sorry, it's going to be more important than even those two, because this is the game where you don't expect Arsenal to lose now. It's now like, okay, Arsenal need to win, they're going to win, this is West Brom for God's sake, but we saw what happened to Liverpool, and everybody now needs to take care. So, and that is Liverpool. And imagine if Liverpool couldn't win against West Brom at Anfield. Imagine what is going to happen when Arsenal travel to the Hawthorn Stadium and play against West Brom, who seem to find their way. I mean, the game against Leeds notwithstanding, but the last couple of games they had against City and Liverpool are really masterpieces in terms of defending, in my opinion. Not exactly the most enjoyable again, but it is effective sometimes. On Sunday, it is Burnley hosting Fulham, of course, Newcastle United hosting Leicester City. That's a very interesting one. And Chelsea hosting Manchester City. For the moment, this game is going on. This game is taking place because the Man City players have returned to training, and and I think I don't know what to say, because before the game between Man City and Everton was postponed, probably I was about to say something else about this game, but now, with the postponing of the City-Everton game, with the COVID cases, and with the team barely returning to training, I think about yesterday it was that they returned to training, in my opinion, I have no doubt that this is going to be a different game from what normally it would have been had City played the game against Everton and trained normally. Because, they stopped, they paused the training for a while, so it is hard to expect this game to be sort of, to be straightforward as you think it is. So we will see how the fitness of the Man City players would work, the fitness of the, mostly, defensive wise, probably, because that's where the cases have been reported. I think Carl Walker, I think, was reported to having a case. Gabriel Jesus, I think, was reported to be tested positive for COVID. We'll see exactly how's the squad doing. For Chelsea, I think it's about getting themselves on the right track. After a loss against Arsenal, a draw against Aston Villa, it doesn't look like the best of time. I mean, in a way, in a perverse way, it looks like in the same time it's the best of times to face City, and it's not the best of times to face City. It's not the best of times to face City from a point of view that Lampard is under pressure. He needs the win. He needs to get himself right on track, and also from a point of view that it's not the best. It's the best time to face City because City now expectedly will be knackered because they didn't train a lot and they don't have 100% fitness on them. So Chelsea playing 2 games, having the momentum, having the normal training procedures of sorts, they would feel like they have a better opportunity of defeating Manchester City. Overall, again, this game is going on as per its date and per its defining date on Sunday at 5:30 p.m. Hopefully it takes place, of course, and we want to see that game anyway. On Monday, the round finishes, of course, with Southampton hosting Liverpool, and I mean, Southampton are one of the teams that I sort of was expecting to do something better, but they regressed a lot in the last couple of matches that it's really hard to see them doing anything of note. I mean, the last four games actually were pretty, straightforward. They should have won them, but they failed to win 4 of those games, including Arsenal, drawn against Arsenal, and Arsenal at the time where Southampton faced them were a complete mess. They failed to win against Fulham, drawing 0-0 against Fulham, and drawing 0-0 against West Ham. And before that, their attack was really going all cylinders. And of course, there's a loss against City. So now 3 games in a row, they couldn't score. 4 games in a row, they couldn't win, and 1 win in the last 5. For Southampton now, it doesn't get any easier facing Liverpool, who are themselves coming off of the back of 2 disappointing draws, like absolutely disappointing draws. I had not the luxury, I mean, I'm trying to think of any word opposite the luxury, because watching those last 2 games for Liverpool wasn't exactly a luxury, wasn't exactly a privilege. I would say I was tortured by watching these 2 games for Liverpool. I think they translate a state of stagnant nature to the squad, really. The last couple of games for Liverpool, it doesn't look like they can find themselves quickly anymore. I mean, they're struggling at the moment and they need some change, and this game probably against a side that at least opens up. I mean, we know that Southampton are going to be opening up and trying to win. Let's see what is going to happen with a side like that. So in my opinion, it's going to be a hell of a game in all aspects. This is going to be more entertaining than anybody would expect, I would say. That is Monday, 4th of January. This is how the round is going to end up, of course. Let's remind you of the table very quickly. In terms of the Premier League, Liverpool, of course, 33 points, Man United 30 points at second, Leicester City 29 at third, as well as Everton on fourth, 29, with 1 game in hand, of course. 5th, Aston Villa with 2 games in hand, 26 points, Chelsea 26 points, as well as Tottenham Hotspur, City and Southampton. West Ham 23 points with Leeds United, 21 points for Wolves, 20 for Arsenal, 19 for Newcastle, 19 for Crystal Palace as well, 16 Burnley, 13 for Brighton, 17th, and in the relegation places, Fulham, Sheffield United and West Brom, and Sheffield United with 2 points. Moving on and to Spain now, of course, La Liga kicks off its match day 17, of course. It kicks off on Saturday, January the 2nd. Villarreal host Levante, Real Betis hosts Sevilla in the Sevilla derby. Getafe hosts Valladolid, and Real Madrid in the interesting game, really, at the night, facing a side that is low-key on his best form of the season in Celta Vigo, of course. I mean, Real Madrid coming off that draw against Elche, surprising, but I think expected, for me personally at least, expected to drop off at a certain game, and that's what they did against Elche. And they don't have, again, the issue like in the Premier League. I mentioned that in the review. They don't have the issue like the Premier League of having Boxing Day fixtures and having games thick and fast and 3 games in 1 week and what have you. They took a rest, so they don't have that problem. But unfortunately, it is what it is, and they dropped off against Elche, and they drew 1-1. Surprisingly, I think Celta Vigo, a side that is going on one of its best runs of the season, like they're now at 8th with 23 points, and they could have gotten more, like had they won the game against Getafe, which they drew, of course, in the last sort of 5 or 6 games or so. Celta Vigo seem to turn their fortunes around. Like by the early November, I mean, we're talking about Celta Vigo helpless, being in relegation battles and what have you, and then they turned their fortunes around. Of course, they drew against Elche, the same opponents that Real Madrid drew against as well. But then, after a defeat against Sevilla, they managed to really turn their fortunes around on the bounce, defeating Granada, Athletic Club, Cadiz, the surprise package of the season until now. Celta Vigo defeated Alaves as well. Getafe drawn against them. Had they won that game, probably would have been even higher on the table. And then they defeated Huesca, of course, and they're now 8th on the table. They feel more comfortable than ever, Celta Vigo. So they're going to be entering this game having nothing to lose pretty much and thinking about getting the points. And they know that probably they would have a game plan against Real Madrid and they would have a lot of confidence in their players and in themselves that they could get something out of the Alfredo Di Stefano stadium, because they know that Real Madrid have sort of problems and they have issues that they could capitalize upon and they could win. For Real Madrid, I think it's all about winning and keeping winning, because already the gap is starting to widen behind Atletico Madrid, and Atletico Madrid have 2 games in hand, so you don't know what's exactly going to be happening in those 2 games, and you don't know what is going to be the deal with Atletico Madrid. If they won those 2 games, they could lead by 6 or 9 points by late January, after the Super Cup as well, that is supposed to be taking place in January. There's just a whole host of mathematics going on at the moment when you're talking about La Liga for Atletico Madrid. Speaking of athletic clubs, let's talk about Bilbao face Elche on Sunday. Alaves, of course, host Atletico Madrid. I think this is a straightforward win for Atletico. I don't see them losing anytime soon. I don't see them dropping points at all, in my opinion, in this one. This is, I think, it should be a trademark Atletico Madrid win, which is 1-0, 2-0 at the very best, and they don't concede goals, of course, and they keep their clean sheets and they keep the strongest defence in Europe kind of number going for them. Eibar hosts Granada, Real Sociedad hosts Osasuna, and Huesca hosts Barcelona. These games all on Sunday. Barcelona now. The game against Eibar, I think, is going to be throwing a lot of shades on Ronald Koeman and the way he deals with things at the club, the way he tries to, manage his tactics. They don't seem right. It doesn't seem right really for him. It doesn't seem going for him anywhere at the moment. Of course, the last time they played, of course, against Eibar, the draw was disappointing in all the ways expected, because they dominated the game. They had chances, but the goal they conceded was on a very stupid mistake from their defence, from Ronald Araujo. So I think this game against Huesca is going to be even trickier, because Huesca, despite being bottom of the table, they're not exactly the worst side in the world. I mean, they had like 9 or 10 draws this season, which, had they won 3 or 4 of them, probably they would have been in a higher place than where they are at the moment. So it does look like this game is going to be even trickier than the game against Eibar, especially that it's away from home, really. And you expect Huesca to be a compact side and expect them to just play on the counter, depending on what's going to happen in the game. And on Monday, of course, the round finishes with Valencia hosting Cadiz. The table of the Liga quickly. Atletico Madrid, of course, good 2 games in hand, 35 points. 33 for Real Madrid, 29 for Sociedad with 17 games. The only team yet to play all of their games in La Liga. 26 for Sevilla with 2 games in hand as well. Villarreal with 26 points. Barcelona 25 with 1 game in hand. Granada 1 game in hand, 24. Celta Vigo 23 points with 1 game in hand as well. The Cadiz 19 points. Real Betis 19 points. Levante 18 as well with Athletic Club. Alaves as well with 18 points. 17 for Getafe. Elche 16 with Eibar. 15 with Valencia. Real Valladolid with 15. 13 with Osasuna. 12 with Huesca. It's not that far in the relegation as you can clearly figure out, and it looks like we could get something out of this relegation battle this season, at least in terms of competitiveness, if Atletico Madrid were to run with Laliga, which, judging by how things are panning out, it looks like it will be the case in Spain at the moment. In Germany, of course, the Bundesliga finally returns this weekend, of course, after the absence for the festive period, as it is per the case for the other leagues, of course. The Bundesliga returns this weekend, of course, with the match day 14th. It kicks off on Saturday, of course. Köln hosts Augsburg in a Bavarian sort of mini derby. Hoffenheim hosts Freiburg. Eintracht Frankfurt hosts Bayer Leverkusen, of course, while Leverkusen coming off the disappointment. That is the loss against Bayern before the festive break. Werder Bremen hosting Union Berlin, that's on Saturday. And Arminia Bielefeld hosting Mönchengladbach. Hertha Berlin hosting a hapless Schalke again. It hurts me every time I talk about Schalke. I don't want to talk about them a lot, but it really hurts every time I mention Schalke, and I think the situation they're in right now, it feels horrible. That is what it is. Stuttgart hosts Leipzig, an interesting game to watch really on Saturday, considering that the top of the table battle is going on, I would say. I mean, it looks at the moment like, yeah, it will be another season of those where Bayern just escape with the league in the last moment and nobody's going to be catching. But I hope, fingers crossed, that we at least get a little bit of a race out of it. Even if Bayern are going to win, it's fine, but at least give us a race to just, find something that I talk about. I find lines to say when I talk about the Bundesliga, really, because, I mean, yeah, I'm basically sort of, familiar now with the fact that Bayern win the Bundesliga, but again, hopefully, fingers crossed, we get something out of this. On Sunday, of course, Borussia Dortmund hosting VfL Wolfsburg and Bayern Munich hosting Mainz in a straightforward game, I would say. For Mainz, I know the time of this episode probably wouldn't allow me to, but hopefully tomorrow I get to talk a little bit more about the Bundesliga when it takes place. When it takes place, hopefully I would be talking more about the Bundesliga also on Sunday. I don't want to give it too much time here to not make the episode too long. So I'm just going to say, finally the return of the Bundesliga, and hopefully, we'll see a sort of a title race this season. I mean, the difference is not that big. There's only 2 points now between Bayer Leverkusen, Leipzig and Bayern Munich on the table, so expectedly we would want to see a race till the end, and I don't want to dwell a lot on not having a race, but I mean, it looks like Bayern Munich are going to escape with the Bundesliga title unless something miraculous happens in the next couple of weeks or so. So anyway, the Bundesliga is returning, and that is at least, and it's exciting really to return, because I like the Bundesliga. Again, I think it's underrated, criminally underrated to the point of lunacy sometimes, with the arguments of Farmers League and Bayern win every year and what have you. So yeah, I mean, it looks like Bayern are going to be winning, but again, at least give us a race out of it. Give us something exciting. Give us some adrenaline rush. Even thinking about the possibility of Bayern losing the title, which apparently some of the pundits and sports pundits, of course, agree that Bayern probably will lose the title this season. I think that's quite far-fetched. It's going to be harder than it seems, but I think they won't lose it. I mean, 2021 doesn't look exactly... I mean, we're only in the first day of that year. I hope it's not as wild of a year as the last one, because if so, then yeah, I probably believe that Bayern would lose the Bundesliga title anyway. So the table of the Bundesliga, of course, before returning to a bit of a refresher. Again, as I mentioned, Bayern Munich top with 30 points, while Leverkusen ahead of Leipzig on goal difference, but 28 points for both of them. Wolfsburg 24 points, Borussia Dortmund 22 at 5th, Union Berlin 21 at 6th, 18 for Stuttgart and Gladbach. Frankfurt 17 points at 9th with Freiburg, Augsburg with 16 points, Hoffenheim with 15 points, Werder Bremen 14, 13 for Hertha Berlin, 11 for Köln, 10 for Arminia Bielefeld in the relegation playoff spot, 6 for Mainz, and bottom of the table, hapless again at the bottom, Schalke with 4 points. And quickly rounding off the episode, of course, let's move on to Serie A, which also returns this Sunday with all of the fixtures crammed on Sunday, really. I'm just going to mention the fixtures. Of course, tomorrow I'm going to be talking more about what is going to be happening in the Bundesliga, hopefully this weekend again. Excuse me, Serie A fans, if you're hearing this and you think, well, I didn't give a lot of time for Serie A, but I think the sort of, I want to make this episode as short as possible because I want to give the space tomorrow to what is going to be happening in those leagues. Hopefully, Inter face Crotone on the 12:30 p.m. kickoff, and then of course on 3 p.m. There are going to be 6 or 7 matches played in Serie A. There will be Atalanta playing Sassuolo. That's an interesting game. I think personally, if I had time, I'll probably watch this if there wasn't other games in other leagues. But Bayern is playing at that time, so on Sunday, so hopefully I'll keep an eye on that one. But it's really interesting and enticing, very appetizing fixture in Serie A and Atalanta. Sassuolo, Roma hosts Sampdoria, Fiorentina hosts Bologna, Genoa hosts Lazio. That's a tricky game for Lazio as well. Parma hosts Torino, Cagliari hosts Napoli. Cagliari fresh of the return of Radione and Golan to them. That guy has been going and coming between Cagliari and Inter now for the last 2 seasons. I mean, does he still have a career anymore? Anyway, Spezia hosting Hellas Verona, Benevento hosting Milan, and Juventus hosting Udinese. Of course, a refresher of the table of the Serie A as well. Milan with 34 points at top, Inter 33 at second, Roma 27 at third, Sassuolo 26 at fourth, Napoli 25 at fifth, Juventus at sixth, 24. Yes, your ears are not deceiving you. That is what you heard. Juventus at 6, Atalanta 7th with 22 points, Lazio 21 at 8th, Hellas Verona 20th, 20 points with 9th, 18 for Benevento at 10th, Sampdoria 17 at 11th, Udinese 15, as well as Bologna, 14 for Cagliari and Fiorentina, 12 for Parma at 16th, Spezia with 17 with 11 points at 17th, 10 for Genoa at 18th, Crotone 9th, and Torino bottom of the table with 8 points. Torino bottom of the table having the prime centre forward for Italy for quite a while, Andrea Bellotti, so it is weird. For the top of the table clashes, the top of the table teams, that is, they don't have that hard of games at the moment. Apart from Sassuolo, really, I don't see Juventus struggling, but they struggled this season, but if they struggle against Udinese, and it's very possible, really, it would, destroy, I think, their opportunity and their hype and their, they're already 9 points now behind Milan. They have, yes, they have 1 game in hand, but it's not sure exactly if you're going to be winning against Napoli when that game is going to be rescheduled. It was supposed to be rescheduled in late January, I would say, I think, or early February by max. Atalanta also have a couple of games in hand as well, so there's a lot of, again, mathematics going on as well in Serie A as well as the other leagues. Juventus, I don't expect them to struggle much, but you don't know. Football is a weird sport. Milan travel to Benevento. It's a tricky game. Benevento held both Lazio and Juventus to a draw there, so it really looks like Milan might struggle there. Of course, it's a game with epic proportions when you consider that Fillipo Inzaghi, the legend of AC Milan, Champions League winner twice with AC Milan, is going to be, coaching Benevento and playing against them. That is going to be, great to watch from a storyline point of view, looking at the former legend of AC Milan playing against his former team and potentially halting them to a bad result, maybe even ending the unbeaten run. Wouldn't that be poetic? Wouldn't that be so poetic that the end of Milan's unbeaten run comes at the hands of their own legend in Fillipo Inzaghi? It's going to be ridiculous. A host of interesting games as well across the board. Cagliari Napoli, again, an interesting game. By the way, quick recovery to Gennaro Gattuso. It looks like he has an illness in his eye, a nervous illness in his eye. That it's related to stress and pressure. Really, that's what it is. His eyes are starting to close, getting more narrow. That's why he wore the eye patch in the last couple of games, and even before he wore the eye patch, you could see that through the glasses his eyes were really narrowing and he was having a problem with his right eye. Quick recovery for Gennaro Gattuso, another legend in the world of football. And that's it, of course, for this episode. Thank you for watching / listening. Like, share, comment on this video. What do you think is going to happen in this weekend in all of the European top leagues? Subscribe, most importantly, to the channel. Help us reach the 500 mark. At the moment, that's what I want to reach. PSP on Twitter. Find me there. Pitch Side Ball on Instagram. Listen to the podcast on Spotify, Google Podcasts, or wherever you can get it from. Or catch it later on at www.webreathesports.com. I was your host, the HOD of the PSP, and until I see you soon, goodbye and Happy New Year again.